The following program is a public access production of the Cayuga Museum of History and Art and Case Research Lab, who assumes full responsibility for its content. The content of this program does not represent the views of Auburn Regional Media Access, which serves as a forum for community expression and offers TV training, production facilities, and channel time to all Auburn area residents and organizations.
Well, welcome, Ted. Welcome, everybody, to the Carriage House Theater at the Cayuga Museum of History and Art. For those who have not been here before or have not been here in a while, we are happy to welcome Ted Freeman here as part of a current ongoing exhibit, Harriet, A Taste of Freedom, which is an art exhibit that is on display at all of the cultural sites throughout Auburn. The Cayuga Museum is the main coordinating site, but you can go to any of the cultural sites of Auburn and you'll see a portion of the exhibit there. But if you want to see the full thing, I'd say your best opportunity is First Friday next week, when you can really hit all of the sites in one go. So let's talk a little bit about Ted here. I've made sure that I took your bio from the last time we had you at the program.
I didn't do it.
So Ted Freeman's family has lived in Auburn since the community's founding. His ancestors, Harry and Kate Freeman, established with John Hardenbergh the settlement that became Hardenbergh's Corners and eventually Auburn. He is an alumnus of Villanova University and received one of their highest awards available to alumni in 1984. The Medallion of Excellence. You feel excellent, Ted?
Ask my wife.
He's the second African American to receive the award. He began his career working with street gangs in West Philadelphia at the Haverford Community Center. He was then led to return to Auburn, New York as the director of the Booker T. Washington Community Center in his old neighborhood. Freeman has been involved with the National Urban League movement for the past 46 years. Starting in Rochester, New York, he became the president and CEO of the Urban League of Hudson County in Jersey City, New Jersey. After retirement, he relocated to Orlando, Florida, and became a board member of the Metropolitan Orlando Urban League. He has two published books, Acquiring Wisdom and God's Free Man, which was the last program we had here, and I think you have the book with you right now. And he is currently working on a third book as well. Before we get started, I did want to say a quick thank you to the sponsors who made this evening possible. First off, this program was made possible by Commemorate 250 funding provided by the City of Auburn's Historic and Cultural Sites Commission and New York State Equal Rights Heritage Center. And the overall exhibit, Harriet, A Taste of Freedom, is supported by the Allen Family Foundation, Beginnings Credit Union, the Cayuga Community Fund at the CNY Community Foundation, Nelson B. Delavan Foundation, the Winifred and DeVilla Sloan Jr. Charitable Trust, and 2026 Cayuga Museum exhibitor sponsors. All right. So just getting started, Ted, we here in Auburn, we're hearing more and more about Harriet Tubman. She's one of the most famous people here in Auburn. This is a big inspiration for this talk overall. I know over the phone we chatted a little bit about sort of your thoughts about Harriet Tubman's place here in the community. And so, according to your family's stories and your research, what did Auburn look like in 1859 when she chose to settle here, and what do you think made Auburn the place that she chose?
Good question, Jeff. In 1859, Auburn, between the work that was done in New Guinea by my people and the work that was done at the Auburn Theological Seminary, was the only safe place for Harriet to move her family and herself to in the United States. And as I was telling some folks a little bit earlier, Harriet didn't like the idea of being run out of her country, number one. And Mama Rit, she didn't like that Canadian coal. And Harriet wasn't too fond of it herself. So they wanted to come back to the United States. Auburn and the vicinity, I would say, I haven't done enough research to say exactly, but if you took a piece of string and for 20 miles around Auburn Center, you had more underground railroad stations in our area than anywhere in the United States of America because of the work of Auburn Theological Seminary and the work of the Freemans at New Guinea, which they started in 1794. Harriet, who was right across the lake, not that far from Rochester, rowboat ride away, talked with Frederick, who talked with my people. And you had a lot of good folks who were already saying that she needs to come back home and all this kind of stuff. But one of the things that has created problems for people, when you don't study complete history, you come up with phony history. And the way it's set up right, it was set up before my book and I got back home, is Harriet, some good folks who were abolitionists, told Harriet to go to Auburn. Forget about $10,000 price on your head, dead or alive. Just go on to Auburn. There's good people down South Street that'll help you. And she just moseyed on into Auburn and walked her little black self down the street in Auburn and knocked on white doors, hollering, "I'm Harriet Tubman." No, that's not how it happened. You know, we've got a lot of stuff because of our inability to share our complete history that leaves us in the dark and causes some folks to lose their mind and think they did it all. The real tale is that she came up to New Guinea. My great-great-grandmother and my great-great-aunt, Luke's wife. My great-great-grandmother was a seamstress. She was a slave in the D.C. area, and she was one of those hoity-toity seamstress with the French designs and all that, till she ran away. So she had a close relationship with Fanny Seward and with Bloomer. I forget her first name. I was trying to find it, but it wasn't Fran Bloomer. Anybody can help me? Yes. Now, most of the men in here only know the term bloomers from the women's undergarment. Yes, she created and it was named after her, okay? That's the bloomers. But she was a very creative woman and she had a lot of designs that she wanted worked up. And Grandma Mary could do that for her. Plus, Grandma Mary did a lot of the curtains and some dresses for Fanny Seward, too. So Harry came up to the area. Now, this is Luke and Platt, the sons of Harry and Kate. Harry and Kate Harry might have been dead by then. I don't have any official dates on the death of either one of them, but Harry was alive when they brought William back into town after the murders. It was like 1842, 44. Be ready to help me out. Like I said in the beginning, I'm old. So I like to use the C, circa, to cover the areas because I have to look up what it is. But Luke and Platt were the main Freemans in charge when she came. They took her down and introduced her to Fanny. Fanny introduced her to William. And the rest is history. You have a black woman in 1859 owning property. And I got a lot more around that, but we'll wait as we build, because I know you got some.
I should just note that that's always amazing to me because this is also in the backyard of Millard Fillmore, who signed the Fugitive Slave Act, which made it in part illegal for Harriet Tubman to have the property here. So a very complex, community.
It had always been the initial approaches that as a country that we established to abolish slavery, like in 1815, 1818, 1820, somewhere there, was a 30-year process you would have to go through to get out of it. And then everything else that was done was a compromise. You can be free up here, but if a slave catcher can catch you and get you below the Mason-Dixie line, that's your tail. And you don't even have to. Let me deal with one thing right now that might spark some interest. Did Hardenbergh have slaves? No. John Hardenbergh, did not have slaves. What he did was play the slave game. He played the slave game. Now, Jonas Hardenbergh, his brother, big time slaver. Big time. But whatever kind of papers, whatever kind of conditions that needed to be presented, they played the slave game. That's how Harry went to the Revolutionary War with them. Because the colonies did not want black soldiers at the beginning of the war. But it didn't take them too long to say, you know what? We need them. Okay? And they were willing to fight for their freedom. But when John Hardenbergh and Harry went off to war, John was an officer, and he could have a slave as his manservant. Harry said, if you go to war, I go to war. I don't care what they call me. So a lot of the stuff where you talk, yes. The slave game, you have a country that requires you to present yourself as a free man or your property. Now, it'd be nice if people could respect the fact that somebody was free and they had the same opportunities that everybody else had. But we're still working on that, okay? Oh, we're still working on it, Okay? So let's go back 254 years and imagine what it was like when you had all this influx of European immigrants who were serfs in the truest sense of the word. There was no aristocrats running over here and doing all that. Everything that came in them boats, 94 to 98%, were from what was known in Europe as serfs. And this was a brand new opportunity for these individuals. And there was no way anybody that looked like me was going to stand in their way of developing their own kingdoms in this new land. So to play the slave game is everybody that worked for him got manumission, or whatever that word, I hate that word.
Manumission.
Manumission. Got manumission papers. Anything that needed to be recorded was recorded like they may be property. Matter of fact, Luke was close to death. Why do you think Hardenbergh has no meaningful statue in this community? Why do you think the street that's named after him is an alley on the way out of town? Because he was Dutch. He was filthy rich before he even came up here. They don't even talk about his heritage. His family was one of the top families in New Netherlands. That was Manhattan before the English kicked them out, kicked the Dutch out. They were one of the top merchants. So what they did was buy 6 million acres in the Roseburg, near West Point, in Roseburg, going west. 6 million acres in that area. And they were thriving business people with the Dutch mentality. Wind power, water power. So what we did is just like if you check your history of what they say about Harry Freeman, it comes from some old white guy in 1870 something, or someone knows better than me out there, or 1880, he says, "Oh, I knew him. He was an old darky that liked to tell wild stories." That's the full account of the personality of my great-great-great-grandfather. A darky with wild stories. Most of the times when you see me around town, I'll have some shorts on and a football jersey and some kind of hat, crazy hat. All right? I don't look like I look now just around town. I blend in, right? So, huh? Except for the hat, Patty. But the bottom line is, you would have folks saying, "Oh yeah, I know Ted Freeman." You do? Yeah, he was some huge guy that played football. Did he do anything else? Nah, he's just a football player. That's it? Yeah, you know them football players. They ain't that smart. They can't do that much, whatever. You know? People have a tendency not to tell the complete story. And the sad part is because someone dropped that kind of information, they grab a few pieces of paper and say, he said right here, so-and-so's my slave. That's so you won't snatch him. That's so you won't mess with him. The slave game. You play like you're slaves, because everybody around you is waiting to do something with you. And being Auburnians and Cayuga Countyans, we should be well aware of that, because at the corner of Genesee and State Street is where they published in 1851, 2, somewhere around there, 12 years a slave. 1868? Thank you, ma'am. 12 years a slave. Anybody seen the movie? Amen. You know, ain't nobody give a darn you got a piece of paper in your pocket saying, I'm free. If I can bind you up and get you below the Mason-Dixie line, that's money. The biggest lie that we had to live with for the longest amount of time John Hardenbergh came to Auburn with a little girl and 2 slaves named Harry and Kate Freeman. Lie. John got the position when the state of New York took all that land from the Indians. They were giving it to the soldiers and officers who fought in the Revolutionary War. And I think it was Clinton, I might be mistaken because I didn't look up who it was. Clinton's cousin or younger brother and John Hardenbergh got the task because Hardenbergh was more like Rangers. He was out there reconnoitering and doing all that. Jeff, I don't mean to leave you out. You know, I'm talking and I have to remember to turn to see you, but I want you to know you're in it with me.
I'm letting you talk, Dad. This is all wonderful information.
Okay, and then I'm going to stop and get back to your questions. Where was I? And you got to keep me posted.
You were talking about the Sullivan-Clinton expedition.
Oh, so no, not what they did to the Indians. That was already done. All right? And we know we have a history of treating people really bad. So this has nothing to do with the Sullivan-Clinton thing during the war. This is after the war, when they took the land and was going to give it to the soldiers and the officers. Somebody had to do the logistical work of identifying the land and parceling it up. So I'll just call him Clinton Jr. and John Hardenbergh were given the task to reconnoiter and set up the plots so people could get their land. Now, you got to remember, when the Revolutionary War started, Harry and Kate were his first indentured servants from England. And they had a thriving business going when he got called to the militia and they had to take, and then we were all fighting. So when the war was over, everybody was back in Rosendale, west of Rosendale. I think one place was McKeever Falls or McFever or something. It's in the book.
Good plug for his book.
You know, it's funny. I don't really spend a lot of time. I don't have any books here because we poor. And I just ain't got money to spend on extra books, okay? Not upset about anything. I just don't have them. So I have to refer you to Amazon, where they making a killing on my books. I don't know if there's any other authors in here, but if you're trying to make money with your books, Amazon's they're gonna kill you. I make about $1.45 on every book, but the information is more important than that. I'm gonna tell you a secret. I want to do some movies that are in the book. So the book's like brand new because only about 4 to 6% of the population know about it. Okay. So when the Lord says so, we're going to just boom, wow, wow. And someone will go, well, it's been out for a while now. But anyway, where was I at? Okay, and he's got the plots of land, right? He got the western counties, Clyde, the Wayne County, all that kind of stuff. When he saw the Owasco River and its power, I got to have it. So he couldn't come up because he was still parceling out the businesses that he had down there. Harry and Kate came up by themselves and built those first 2 buildings. Now, most of you are saying, well, where they built the buildings, that's real close to the river. The river did not run there at the time. Now, I don't have any help getting this stuff done, so I can only tell you maybe someone will look into it and do it for themselves. Help us out. The river ran about 200 yards west of where it's at now. Oh, you're making that up. No. It ran right where Nolan's shoe store. A gentleman had a little restaurant there a few years ago. And his whole wall got cracked. And so they had to go through the whole process and everything. And out back behind, where I guess the county is now, if you drive up in there, you'll see these big, heavy, old blocks of stone. That's where the first mill was put in by John and Harry. And we need a sign, we need something recognizing that. Somebody put some wood over the top so it would stop crumbling in little pieces. But you go right back up in there and right up back where Nolan's shoe store used to be. You look down and you see these huge, heavy stones sticking out. That was the first grits mill put in by Harry and John. Okay, let me stop.
Well, that actually segues really well into like the next question, because you, of course, were at the start of this conversation, we were talking about New Guinea. That was a big part of our inspiration for talking to you about, the connection to the Harriet exhibit and to the importance of that community in Auburn's history. And I'm wondering if you can talk more about the influence of New Guinea, sort of its founding, and actually I'm sure some people may need context too of what we're even talking about when we talk about New Guinea.
Great questions. First thing you got to understand is that Hardenbergh's Corner was north of Genesee Street. Anything south of Genesee Street was not part of Hardenbergh's Corners. North, the boundary line was Genesee Street, north. Harry and Kate bought land. They weren't trying to, they knew the situation they lived in. Nobody was going to allow them to keep a mill right off of Genesee Street somewhere, where everybody else's mills were. Oh no, a black man owning a mill in 1793? Anywhere, no, oh heck no, that could be my mill. All right? That's the reality. So what they did, they bought land from John up the river, a free slave colony for runaways and free men and women. And they said, I'm not fighting with them over my mill doing this and their mill doing that. I'm going to become the first employment agency in the United States of America. They're going to need able-bodied workers. So from 1794 until about 1818, 20, somewhere in the last 5 years, till the jail got up off the ground. Harry said his biggest competitor was the prison, because it was all kind of schemes and free labor and all that kind of stuff. But up until that point, all the quarries in the Northwest Quadrant, they needed people. Where are they getting the people from? New Guinea. Hardenbergh had the contract for the Genesee Pike from Elbridge to Geneva. 64 feet wide, crushed stones. Turn the old Indian Trail, where about not as wide as this stage, into what we call Route 5 today. And we just set up ancillary businesses and provided the work that the workers that they needed. Extremely important. They had gotten in touch with the Freemans when someone came up with this brilliant idea of sending American blacks back to Africa. What? What? What folks didn't realize or didn't care to realize was that all these things they were trying to do were tribes that were collaborators in making them slaves, most people slaves in the beginning. They had been working with the English, they worked with the United States, created Liberia, which was a mess. So when they approached my family about going, they said, wait a minute, hold it. Where you're talking about going is run by these folks, and those are the folks that destroyed our village. And you want... Okay, I don't have to say no more about that ingenious idea. So it came down to where I was telling some of the folks later, all the things that was being worked on with the turnpike, cleaning latrines, providing some good hot meals for the workers. They were the first food trucks in the United States. We don't even have to talk about what the weather was like. And you got a chuck wagon coming with some good hot stew or something. One amazing story that kind of brought the family close was Luke was William Seward's #1 confidant. Because he was his barber. When he was dating and pursuing Fannie Miller, because his sister went to the same school in Utica. That's how he met Fannie, and as we say where I come from, she split his nose wide open. So when he came and when he finished his schooling, he came to the Exchange Building, started practicing law in Compton Lane, that little lane right next to the Shine Theater that comes up on the loop. That's where Luke was. Yeah, so it was like Luke was the man, okay, with Will. And that's what started our family relationship. So you had all the developments and everything, you had to come to Auburn because the family was no joke. And as I've mentioned before, we had the largest collection of stations, but there was only 4 terminals, 4 major terminals on the East Coast where you could be absorbed. Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and Auburn. I could go on, but we'll get to your next
I think
question.
I'll do, I've got one last one, then I think we'll open it up to a Q&A, but you've already made a little bit of mention to the Auburn Theological Seminary as an important part of like kind of the story of like of the Underground Railroad in the area, and I'm wondering if you can speak particularly to your knowledge and your research on the importance of that in context of Harriet Tubman, the Underground Railroad, like the progressive movements we see, that we think of with Auburn?
First of all, we're going to call it ATS, Auburn Theological Seminary, was the center for the second ecumenical movement in the United States. It was the hub for spirituality, period. Big old dot, period. Okay? Now, that had a major effect. People were able to separate, which we're having a hard time doing now, but we're getting there, separating their spiritual values from their earthly wants. Side note, we've been governed by our earthly wants in this nation that is one nation under God for too long now. And nobody has to be ashamed of how and what they did or participated. You just have to correct yourself. You know, forgiveness is the key to our basic beliefs in this country. When I took Christ off of layaway, I had him on layaway like a lot of other folks. Put a little something down every now and then. I got things to do. I'll get back to you when I get older. Well, when he got done bouncing me off the side of a mountain, I went to the store and said, I'm whatever I got to pay, that's it. I'm done. And the biggest thing I learned was I thought I had a right, one, to have things my way, and two, to be unforgiving to some people that have been really nasty in my life. And Christ told me this. He says, well, you got free will, you don't have to. But I can't forgive you of all your sins until you forgive others. What? I became the Oprah Winfrey of forgiveness. You get forgiveness, and you get forgiveness, and you get forgiveness. Because you know, when I was preaching, the pastor at the Coalition for the Homeless in Orlando, the first thing everyone had to say when I came in, who's the biggest lowlife in here? You are, Pastor. Because if God can clean me up, you're just a light dusting, okay? So the ideal of forgiveness, of being true to what you want to mouth, ATS was leading the entire country. Feeney and Nash and all these guys were coming through. Ann can tell you stories of the first missionaries that went to Hawaii and all this other kind of stuff. The impact was global, but it created a great glow to go along with what the Freemans were doing. And so you had people who were ready to do it the right way. That's why the only thing Syracuse can talk about is, what is that, what is that thing called?
The Jerry Rescue, yeah.
The Jerry Rescue. That's all they got. Folks got mad, got one guy out of jail. What else they do? Nothing. Okay? I'm glad they did that. But it doesn't compare to what came out of our area. The commitment of people all over the place. I have 9 relatives so far that I know of that fought in the Civil War. every last one of Harry and Kate's grandboys fought in the Civil War. Quiet, Freeman.
No, it's a remarkable history. I think you're right, it's not something that gets talked about as much within the influential, the conversations that people have about like why Harriet Tubman comes to this community, that there is already this black community that was established by your family and everything.
On this street, my family, having Mother Zion, was the hope of every black community in this country. My family around 1830 or 40, not far from here, okay? On this street, brought the AME Zion Church here. Not only did they do that, Grandpa Bill, William Roundtree Freeman, went and got a group of white businessmen to help put the Thompson Memorial AME Zion Church around 1890 something, where it stands today on Parker Street.